Welcome to Like-Minded Arts. I'm Brent Lindstrom, and today we're going to be breaking down Why Oh Why Didn't I Take the Blue Pill? A short film that I did is a type of student project. If you would like to know more about how this was made, please visit my blog at www.likemindedarts.com. So some of my goals when I was making this was to create something that looked a lot like The Matrix.
Than you can possibly imagine. Nino, let me give you one piece
I was
of
doing
advice.
it on a $1,000 budget, went a little over budget.
Deja vu.
Most of the things I was able to get for free except for my labor. In this instance, I had a scene that I did not have an actual location for. So this was all done on green screen, which is one of the things I was trying to learn at the time. And I also wanted to do some practical effects. So this post here, I wanted to do a concrete shattering effect like you would see in The Matrix. So I built a post out of sheetrock and 2x4s, created a hollow spot on here, and I put a cord going through so that when we yanked on the cord, it would break this post in the spot and pull out a whole bunch of foam and dust and debris. Then we got a cat and we dropped it a couple of times from about 3 feet up. Nothing to hurt the cat, but enough to give it an illusion like it was going through the air. And that totally didn't work. We ended up having to film the cat walking and then masking it out so that it looked like its legs were flailing and then speed it up in post-production. Here is the effect combined with the 2D images, and it worked out pretty good. Didn't get very good shadows on the cat, but the cat was a very good actor for this part.
Nino, there's something.
One of the things I learned was, even though I had this whole thing storyboarded
See,
and shot listed
between
out,
you and me.
I did not have enough coverage or B-roll. So some of these little B-roll clips that you saw where the shoes were coming together, various things like that, I had to do after production had wrapped.
Your advice?
Interesting thing about this scene here is that
Welcome,
our
Nino.
Neo character
I am
was
Morpheus.
sick on the day that he had to do
Would I be
this
wrong to imagine
filming,
you feel
and so these were
something
shot
like
at
Alice
different times,
tumbling down the
masked
rabbit
out.
Yeah.
And of course, I wanted to do another concrete breaking scene.
You can
So
say
where
that.
our Morpheus character comes down and hits the deck, we created a tile made out of 2x2s and 1/4-inch sheetrock, all skim coated in a little thin layer of mortar. This was surprisingly hard to break on set. We had our actor jumping from a couple feet up and slamming his feet through. Took a couple tries before we were actually able to break through enough to give this effect. But once we composited it all together in the end, it actually sold really well.
A man who can't believe what he sees.
For this, we did kind
As
of
if
a
you've
Back
realized
to
you're
the Future
asleep,
style
merely
thing
dreaming.
where we
I can tell because
created
you
a
keep
master
blinking.
shot and spliced them
Well, Nino,
together
this is more
in
true than you know.
post-production. Another thing you'll notice here too is that this set was obviously a free set to me. It was a home that was under construction that I had just about finished building, and I did not have the perfect scenery. There was doors behind our actor here where I wanted a smooth wall, and I didn't have these old style mansion sconces. So I tried to do that all in post. A lot of it was masking out around this chair and our actor as he goes around it. And even though he's very smooth, got the bald head, the leather jacket, there was a lot of jitter when I masked it out, and that was incredibly difficult and time consuming. Took weeks and weeks and weeks, maybe even months to do. And then when I added in these lights, they did not end up looking real. Even though we had lighting that was supposedly motivated by them, the sconces themselves don't really sell. Anything that you can do practically is a whole lot better. If we would have just spent 25 bucks on a cheap, used, or even fake wall sconce and just mounted it on here and taken it off later and patched the wall, it would have been so much easier than trying to do this in post-production.
Oh.
Another thing I learned is that when you call cut,
I don't
it
like
doesn't
the idea
hurt to
that
let the
dreams have
camera
anything
roll a
to do
little
with
bit longer.
reality.
Some of the reactions
I know
we got
exactly
after we
what
called
you mean.
cut were perfect for splicing into this.
Let me guess that you felt your whole life, but could not
There's
see.
another thing you can see,
like a
that
disease.
frame above the fireplace,
Somehow,
that was
you've heard
not
that I
there
have
to
the
begin
answers.
with. And even
Answers
though we
to a
tried
specific
adding it in
question.
after the
You know
fact
the
to cover up
question.
some modern plugs, it just
What is the
didn't look right.
plexus? Yes.
For the
The
props,
plexus,
most
Nino,
of
is all
everything
around
was
us,
free
even in this
or
very
picked up
room.
at a secondhand
You can
store.
never see it, but it
The
invades
chairs
all
I
that
borrowed
you do.
from my dad's office,
You had
and
for
they
breakfast
actually
this
matched
morning.
the
You
Matrix's
passed it on your
chairs
way to work. There's a
fairly
sweaty man that
closely.
sold you your coffee and all
The outfits
I
and costumes
don't
were
get it.
bought either at secondhand stores or on
because you're
cheap
delusional.
Halloween websites.
People's minds are not
For the pill
prepared to
scene
see it.
here, I tried to shop
Yours
pharmacies to
might be.
find red pills and blue pills. I could not find any that looked realistic, and I didn't want to
This
use
is your
jelly
only
beans
chance.
because I thought that would look cheesy.
Swallow the blue pill.
So I got some
And you'll forget
off-brand
this ever
NyQuil and
happened.
Dayquil,
You'll wake up in
and I
your bed
color graded them to
and
change
go
them
about your
from
normal
orange and
life.
green to
Swallow
red
the
and
red
blue.
pill,
And in the end,
Alice.
they look
and
like
I'll
jelly
show you how
beans.
deep the rabbit hole.
But this next scene, we did this in that same garage, or at
That
least
trilogy
that same
keeps reminding
house,
me.
but the garage of it. It was
Time
very
is always
plain,
against
so
us.
I found a whole bunch of used pallets that were around the job site, very free, turned the tables into that, stacked them up against the walls. Then I went to that secondhand thrift store, and I bought a whole bunch of cheap old monitors that probably didn't even work anymore, then just grabbed a whole bunch of loose wires, the type you might have sitting in some junk drawer somewhere in your house that'll never get used for anything else. Grabbed a few potatoes for fun, and an old elementary school science project, this Jacob's Ladder. For the mirror scene, we tried this two different ways. We did it once with the mirror intact, and then once with it broken. Realized that this was one of the few effects that was a lot easier to do in After Effects than it was to do practically.
Did you
And
see?
then when we had the liquid mirror coming
you ever
from
had a
his
dream
hands,
convince you
I
that
had
it was
never
real?
used 3D
What if that
animation
dream was more
before.
real than reality? Imagine you couldn't
I
wake
gave
from that dream.
Blender a try,
You couldn't
and
wake.
Blender had
You
a
always
very
remain
steep
asleep.
learning curve, especially at this time, and I could not make it match that silver mercury look. So that's why it's black instead of
This is
mercury
madness.
colors.
Madness? Perhaps. Impossible?
Another thing
You
I
know
learned
nothing of
was
what's
that
possible.
when you hire your actors, ask for a current photo. When I hired
cold.
my Neo character, his photo
These
showed
vitals
him
keep
as
going up and
clean
down on my
shaven.
screen.
However, when he showed up on site that day, he had facial hair.
These squiggly lines
I
are
had
getting more
no clue
squiggly.
how I was going to make this Blender model work
Apex?
up around his facial hair. Eventually I got it to work out fine, but I was very worried the whole time going into it. I guess I could have asked him to shave, but I didn't. For this next scene, we went to a swimming pool. Did a little scuba diving with an underwater camera for a few minutes. And then we came up, and you'll notice that the color of the water, or T as it should be, is a different color in every clip. And that's because I was using a cheap consumer grade computer, and it was crashing on me every few minutes, and I could not get a consistent color grade across all of the clips of water from this entire scene, so they all look different. It really pays to have a nice computer. For this scene, we wanted to have the Cheshire Cat lift her out of the teacup. To do that, we put a harness on her underneath her dress and had a steel cable run up to a 2x6. And we had a couple of guys on either side of the 2x6 lift her up out of the water. Since there was only one cable on her, she kept spinning in the wrong directions. So we had to do this until our helpers were completely worn out and we had a shot that looked convincing. Voila! Perfect! For the tea party scene, I had a couple of problems. As you can see, this scene has a lot of repetition going on, a lot of tea sets that I got at a secondhand thrift store, like all my other props. And for the most part, that wasn't too bad. I just had to replicate that table all the way back. However, my lighting was a big trick. So the LED Christmas lights that I have here were on an electrical frequency that did not match the shutter speed of my camera. And so when I went to edit this, those lights were flickering like crazy, and my china balls had fluorescent bulbs in, so they were steady because the plasma in those doesn't die off the instant the frequency changes, which is what was going on with my LEDs. Another problem was that when I filmed my characters here to composite in later, I had my camera directly in front of them, so they're walking towards the camera. The only problem is I'm placing my camera on this table scene over here, so they needed to be walking in an arc around it. Instead, they're walking towards it, so they actually end up gliding to the side as they're walking in. Looks very unconvincing, even though I've got some nice little smoke or steam coming up off of my teapots where I wanted them there. So this was a little bit janky, in my opinion. That one we actually filmed in reverse so that she could catch it perfectly. That worked out pretty good. This credit scene, I wanted to have that stopwatch slowly drifting down. Luckily, the camera I had allowed for me to do over 200 frames per second, and I did it on a green screen, and it turned out beautiful. Thanks everyone for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this little breakdown of my short film. If you would like to learn more and get a better breakdown of how I made this, please visit my blog at lightmindedarts.com. In the meantime, like and subscribe, comment. I'd love to see what you guys thought, what you learned, and maybe some suggestions you might have for me also. We're all on this journey together. Let's go make some good movies. See ya next time.